Uh, Hi everyone, welcome back to you all into Road Podcast, another episode. Uh, in today's episode, we are going to discuss about typically different topics. We are based on books written by the authors and Robert P. Jones. He's a professor of University of in America, and he wrote these books. The book's name is The Hidden Roots of White Supremacy and the Path to a Shared American Future. And normally we have been faced like we've been think that the white is superior in terms of color, in terms of the white people. Basically in developing country and poor countries, they thought like white are the people of white skin, they are something different. The sources of white people, they came from the another world. That way we will normally think that. And this is a very debatable topic since a long time. And these books focus on what is the white supremacy and what is the main root cause of white supremacy, taking the references of some specific area and zone of Americas. And its books is based on the data of taking references, the history of white supremacy in America back in 1493, and examine the contemporary communities in Mississippi, Minnesota and Oklahoma for the model of racial repair. So based on that, the author described in detail in these books, and Prince, he just completed these books from page 1 to the end, and how much he grasps the knowledge after read that books, and he will highlight basically the most important things he will highlight. And today we are going to discuss about that books and the concept about the white supremacy. Okay, welcome to you, Prince, in this Road Podcast talk program.
Namaste.
And can you tell us what is white supremacy?
White supremacy is where, basically, because white people have done so many advancements, and because we're quote unquote smarter than the rest of humans, that they get to have everything and they control everyone. That's white supremacy. It's where white people control every affair. They control everything. They give disadvantages to people who aren't white. They control them.
That called the white supremacy. And what the cause, the root cause, means that's the foundation cause of being a white supremacy?
The foundation cause is the doctrine of discovery.
Or doctrine of difference. That means white people, they are...
I'll just explain the doctrine of discovery to you. The doctrine of discovery, according to the book, is where, due to the fact that the white people found new lands, they told that the people who were in those lands that they weren't Christian. They weren't white and Christian. Because of that, and also the fact that they had found those lands, that means that God had given them those lands, but not to the people who are living there, because they were heretics. And they were the heretics that were being discovered by the quote-unquote heavenly saviors, aka the Europeans. They were going to take back land from those non-Christians or pagans, and turn the land into a Christianized place.
Okay, did you complete these all books?
Yes.
So how?
Yeah.
Okay, just tell briefly about the root cause and about this cause, not root cause. Talk about this book, what you got. Just love it. Let's give the chances to learn about these books. It's quite very fascinating and good books. The newly recently published. Okay, just talk about
this book. It starts off about how the indigenous people of Mississippi were forced from their lands into Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears Andrew Jackson,
Mm.
the President of the United States in 1831. It also goes on to tell how this set up the scene for the infamous 1955 day when Emmett Lewis Till was murdered by 3 white boys
Mm-hmm.
in Mississippi,
Mm-hmm.
near the town of Money, Mississippi.
Uh-huh.
Well, it talks about how early Mississippi was like fueled by racism towards the Native Americans that lived there, and how they were sent to the Indian Territory, aka Oklahoma, which was called Indian Territory, and how it was mostly driven off of slaves. In the form of slave labor, how Mississippi's economy was mostly fueled by slave labor.
Oh, why we call that? Was the Oklahoma was an Indian territory?
Yeah.
Indian territory. How they named that?
Indigenous.
Oh, indigenous territory.
No, it's because when Christopher Columbus landed first in the Americas, he fought the people. He arrived in India, so he called them Indians.
Oh.
And that's the reason they call, up until this day, they still call indigenous people in the Americas Indians.
Oh. Uh-huh.
And it also talks about like the slave labor in Mississippi, how in some parts of Mississippi, counties were outnumbered by black people. In some places, for example, the Tallahatchie County and the Delta counties, in the Delta counties, most notably the Tallahatchie County, white people were outnumbered 18-1 before the Civil War in terms of black people. There's 18 black people for every white person in Tallahatchie County in 1860 before the Civil War.
Oh, Civil War started
in 1861.
61. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And basically, it also talks about how like the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto, the first Spanish explorer to reach the Mississippi River. Okay, when he reached the Mississippi River, he went to a local town and fought a skirmish with them and planted a cross and got a peace treaty with the indigenous people of there, aka the Indians, and he reported to Emperor Charles V of Spain, Emperor Charles II or Charles V if you're in Austria, of the success of there, and the Indians were subjected to them now and all that, okay? But truly they weren't subjected to the Spanish, but he also describes a painting where Hernando de Soto and his expedition meets the Indian village, and there's like an aftermath of a battle in the background where the Indians give up their weapons. They're throwing their weapons on the ground, and while the Spanish are planting up a cross, and Hernando de Soto is making arrangements with the Native American or the indigenous chief of a peace treaty.
And then?
And that's the painting, okay? And let's just go to... And we should also talk about the aftermath of the Civil War.
Oh, what happened after the aftermath of the Civil War? What happened?
Well, it was a time period called Reconstruction. During the Reconstruction, which lasted from 1865 to 1877, it was basically a way of getting the states that seceded during the Civil War another chance to re-enter the Union, but they had to go under like changes in government and all that. Okay.
And then what happened?
What happened in the Reconstruction was that black people got rights. They got the voting rights.
When they got the voting right, black people? By date, do you have any idea?
That there's a lot of complicated. When I'm talking about voting rights in the Reconstruction, I meant only in the Reconstruction. After the Reconstruction, they didn't have any voting rights.
Oh.
Because the North never paid attention after the Reconstruction in the South until the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, after the 13th Amendment, all slaves were emancipated. By the 14th Amendment, they got the right to vote and all that. Any citizens. As the reason they were made into citizens of the U.S. because of emancipation. Technically, all African Americans in the U.S. were technically U.S. citizens after the 13th Amendment. But due to the South being racist, though, the South implemented black codes. And black codes were a form of neo-slavery. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Carry on.
Black codes were basically was a type of form of neo-slavery, you could call. The only thing it was it was basically slavery, but in everything else except name. It was called black codes, but it could be called it's most likely to be called slavery. Basically, black codes made it so that black people couldn't go outside of their town without their employer's permit. And for black people to even live in the said town, they needed an employer. They needed to be employed to live in a town. And everyone in the South, they knew what was going to happen. They knew that black people were dumb, so they're gonna stay there. So they would tell, hey, you can work with us. And it's a system called sharecropping, okay? Where the employer would give a part of his land to the African American, okay? But the African American has no house, no equipment, no tools. So what the employer does, he gives them the black person the tools and all that. And in return, the black person must give a year's worth of crops to them. It sounds like feudalism, modern day feudalism.
Okay.
That is feudalism.
That means
that's serfdom. Because if they weren't employed, the only way for black people to get employed at that time was mostly sharecropping. And it practically forced black people to be sharecroppers. And sharecroppers were awful, because what would happen is that the employer would keep a high interest rate in return for the equipment and seeds and all that. And they wouldn't pay them in cash, would give them in the crops they planted. You know, the crops they planted. Let me speak, okay? In the crops they planted, they would have to sell a portion of their crops they planted. But the sharecroppers would keep such a high interest rate that the black people wouldn't be able to actually pay off the debt. And what the sharecroppers would say, the employers, they would say that you could pay off this debt you have by working for us for another year. And with that, the African American would go in an endless cycle of debt, as the white person would always make them in debt with high interest rates. And the only solution for black people was to migrate to the north. And that's what happened. As many black people started leaving towns and all that, and they moved to cities like Chicago, Detroit, that were newly industrializing and all that, and they found themselves really successful there. Okay? But there's still a large majority of black people who still lived in the South. Still.
You were talking about that things on the slavery times. Things you talking?
What?
Slavery times.
Slavery times?
Slave time, no.
I didn't talk about the slavery times. I told the post-Civil War.
Post-Civil War. Okay, carry on.
So, basically, but yeah, sharecropping, okay? And the 14th Amendment was meant to counteract that by giving black people voting rights and all that. And with black people having voting rights, black people began to represent predominantly white places in the South. They predominantly started to represent 7 counties and places. Blancy K. Bruce became a senator from Mississippi, and also there were multiple representatives from Mississippi who are black. But after the end of Reconstruction, after the Compromise of 1876, 7,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the North no longer enforced any of these rules, and the South quickly took advantage. They made it so that if you were a black person, to vote, you need to pay a poll tax. Okay?
Poll tax, what did that mean?
A poll tax means a certain amount of money required to pay to actually vote.
Oh, got you. Mm-hmm.
And they also required an intelligence test, where basically the black person had to take a test to determine whether they're smart enough to vote or not.
Mm-hmm.
And they also had the grandfather clauses. Okay, if your grandfather was someone who was able to vote back in the day, none of those would be able to be applied to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that made it so that white people wouldn't have to pay any poll taxes,
Mm-hmm.
but black people had to, because tell me, most black people were slaves,
Mm-hmm.
so they never had the right to vote or get educated, so they would never have the grandfather clauses. But all white men would have the grandfather clauses because their grandfather, before the Civil War, was able to vote.
Oh.
See, and that's what we took advantage. Then also different organizations such as the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, an organization that was predominantly founded on racist beliefs. The main goal of the KKK was scaring black people. They gave death threats to black people, telling them not to vote, and they would burn down black people's houses in the country, trying to scare them away.
Oh. That's the KKK organization founded by white people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the scary part of the KKK, they wear entirely white dresses. But can get a white mask, keep it all over here, and go up here, all white clothing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. They would keep no black
That's
clothing.
the symbolic reflection of white supremacy.
Yes.
Also, we can relate. The book
Yeah.
also write. Okay,
Yeah.
move forward.
And then came Emmett Till. Emmett Till's mother used to go to the town of Money in Mississippi a lot because her grandfather used to live there. Miami Till,
Mm-hmm.
her name, Emmett Till's mother, had a child, Emmett Till. Okay, and one day. And an important part is that his father, Lewiston, didn't care about his son and didn't care about the family. Okay, and never cared about her. And in World War II, Lewiston was drafted and sent into North Africa, where he died. But the last thing he had was a ring that he got in Morocco about silver and all that. And Miami Till was able to get it. Miami Till, and one day, Emmett Till's uncle came up to Chicago and all that and told yo, we're gonna go to. Are you able to come to the South? It's summer. You can spend the next weeks with us. You can fish. You can work with us and all that. And Emmett Till said, "Yay!" and went with his uncle and his cousin also. And they worked there for the next week and so. And 3 days before Emmett Till was a week before Emmett Till was supposed to leave, it was 3 or 4 days. His mom also warned him about certain customs that black people had to follow in order not to get lynched and all that. And if you don't know what lynching means, that basically means a public execution. Lynching, but not by the government, by a mob of people. That's lynching. And basically what happened was that Emmett Till broke one of the most extreme rules in the South. He did a whistle at a white woman.
Oh.
And that was not supposed to happen due to the racist attitudes. And the shopkeepers and the boys who were there, they started chasing him down. And he managed to reach his house, but the boys weren't able to track him. But then in the next day, 2 days later, the boys came to his house. They told, "Is this the house where Emmett Till is?" And his uncle said yes. And then they went into his house, found and started searching for Emmett Till. They found Emmett Till in his bed, woke him up, told him to get dressed, and they forcibly pulled him into their car. And what happened after that, Emmett Till was nowhere to be found. After a few days, we started to get worried. But after a few days, a fisherman at a lake that was like the Talatale Lake found a body, and it turns out that body was of Emmett Till.
Oh.
And the body was entirely like messed up. His eyes were beaten out, like his eye was torn out. Eye was torn out. He had a cut all over here. He had a gun. He had a gun shot behind his head and all that, and he was unrecognizable. Oh. Can you shut up for some reason? Let me explain.
Okay.
Yeah, God damn, you don't know. So, Emmett Till's it to Miami, and then she comes down, and what happens is that we white people want to quickly bury his body so that no like controversial things happen, but his mother doesn't let it, and she takes a court case, and most of the white people there, and his uncle also takes a court case against them. And most of the white people there don't even testify, or most of the white people there help the white people who killed him. And what they say is that, tell me, like, do you exactly know that's Emmett Till's body? And like, and she says, sure, and all that. And what happens is that, like, during the case, like, and all that, but before it, like, they tried burying Emmett Till's body. But what happened was that, Emmett Till's mom, Miami Till, wanted to look at her son for the last time, but the white son-in-laws wouldn't allow her. But she insisted and actually looked at her face, and then she realized how badly he had been done, and said that we need the photographers here, the nation has to see this. And photos were released of his beaten up body. But before the photographers could take the photo, his eye was kept back in and like made to look better, so that like the South wasn't treated. Otherwise, the South would go out on them, and they started taking photos and all that. And a court case happened, and the killers of Emmett Till, the shopkeepers, were found not guilty due to Southern people saying that supporting them as Southern traditions and all that, because Southern people like to work with each other, like whites worked with each other to target blacks, and they wouldn't testify against a fellow whites. So they found the killers not guilty, and it was throughout the nation. It was known as a corrupt case. It was a scandalous case, and it started the civil rights movement, which eventually gave black people the voting rights again.
That's the foundation. That incident enlarged throughout the civil rights movement, right? Okay. It is. Do you have any idea what date that incident happened? Like,
the incident happened during the July of 1955.
1955. Okay.
So then.
And that's all about only this book?
No, this is going to be part 1 of a 3-part series explaining the 3 stories on this book. The 3 stories are quite long, so stay tuned.